Yeah, first of all, thanks to the team to get this going. And we would, as much as we wanted to have this maybe live, but this is another way of reaching out to students and telling them to actually come and talk to us. So I'm Nagamani Jaya. I'm an associate professor at the Department of Metallurgical Engineering and Material Science, and I have spent about 5 years here. Before that, if I go back, rewind, I come from Mysore, which is a small town. I would consider it a small town considering now I'm living in Bombay. And I grew up in a campus. In fact, I have lived all my life in a campus, in different campuses, but it's been that way, that it's very protected, sheltered life, I would say. This was in the Regional Institute of Education in Mysore, where I have had, this institute is sort of built by NCERT, which is training teachers and trying to get the syllabus of schools, especially for CBSE, going. So we were in a school which was attached to this college, and I also lived in the campus because my father happens to be a teacher in the school, so he actually taught me as well. What I wanted to do, I did not know, but in a sense I wanted to be a teacher. Like all my life, I think, because of the environment probably where I was, and also because of some very good teachers. I mean, at a young age you are influenced by teachers, and I was a big fan of my geography teacher, so I wanted to pursue geography. That at that time, it's an unusual thing, I guess, for most students, especially in engineering college. So that college, I really wanted to go to a hostel, because I have lived all my life in this campus, in the home where I knew everybody. I have neighbors, I'm literally going from one house to another. We sort of grew up as a big, large community. But I wanted to now escape and experience something where there are no parents to say anything. So that way I wanted to explore hostel life. So this was a residential campus, slightly away from home in Surathkal. So I got admission to NITK and I went there. So the approach is different, and the way you learn or look at things is very different. So I really thoroughly started enjoying materials engineering there, and I mean, to be frank, it was not in Surathkal in doing metallurgy. There it was mostly like I said, the college life, just general growing up and making friends. So there it used to be a lot of mugging up, felt like metallurgy is very theoretical, and you just read things and there's nothing that, you have to remember a lot of stuff. So that's what I felt there. But when I came to IISc, the approach was so different that it was involving a lot of thinking and understanding, and I realized how complex this world is and how difficult it is to solve even seemingly simple problems unless you combine mathematics, experiments, and theory and so on. Even today, you need some experience abroad to get into a good academic institution in India. If it's not your PhD, at least a postdoc. Of course, today things are changing a bit because we have more institutions. When I joined, there were sort of fewer institutions, at least when I was planning to join. So that was another reason why I had to do a postdoc abroad. Otherwise, I didn't really want to or need to as such. But that was some sort of a need at that time, and I did that. So by the end of the postdoc, my CV was sort of not bad to apply to places like IIT Bombay. So I did that, and fortunately I got in here. And so I have been, since at least my PhD times, I have been working on something called microscale mechanics, which means we look at mechanical behavior of materials at very small length scales. Be it thin films, if you've looked at semiconductors, and if you've zoomed in, you see these layers which are a few nanometers or a few microns in thickness. So how to measure mechanical properties of such materials. And I also jokingly say that I like to break things because I work on fracture mechanics mostly. So of course, to understand how things break is important to find ways of preventing the same, right? So preventing, and also to design materials which are better resistant to fracture. So something called damage tolerance is a term for that. That even though there are flaws, there are defects in the material, you can live with it and still have a very good performance. So that has been my area. But today, like I said, being in Bombay has been so enriching in that sense that we have, colleagues who do processing, colleagues who do physical metallurgy, modeling, computation. So we have sort of collaborated with each of these sort of groups, not each, but many of these groups. And we have been working on a ton of different things, coming from all the way from bulk to very small length scales. So that has been my research interest. And people who want to, even study esoteric things like a shell, how would a nacre shell break, even those things are welcome, and things which are really solving engineering problems. Like you can see that it's very applied as well. So we do this in our lab here mostly. The mechanical testing, we have like our workhorse machine, which is a UTM. So we got this sort of custom made that it can do monotonic loading like tension, bending. So you can see some of the samples that I asked the students to put together. This is all in polymer, polymethyl methacrylate, but these are just model systems. Okay, so this is in fact, the Bangalore beam that I was talking about. That it's actually a bridge, like you would see. So it was inspired by that, but it has a notch now, and you apply a load so that it bends, and from here, and you're studying how it interacts with things that are there. So this is a featureless sample. It's transparent. You can see how the crack is growing, and there is nothing to stop the crack from growing. But in real material systems, you will see grain boundaries, you will see precipitates, you will see second phase structures like fibers, you can see composites where things are reinforced. So there I would, my interest is to keenly look at how things are, how the crack is deflecting, what path is it taking, why is it taking a certain path, why doesn't it go straight, why does it sort of take a turn around. So we put these, when we miniaturize it, obviously I cannot see it with my eyes or not even with the optical camera, right? So we put it inside a scanning electron microscope, and this I think is the sample, the bada sample, the large sample that we have, in which the actual microbeams of this kind are machined by what is called as a focused ion beam machining technique. It's a micro machining tool. And we make these small little beams on top of this sample, which itself is very difficult to handle. And we put it inside a scanning electron microscope. And there is a stage which is this small, which goes into the microscope and pushes, pulls, does the same things that a UTM does, universal testing machine does, but at a very small length scale. So that we are able to see what's going on even at the resolution of a few microns or a few nanometers. So yeah, that has been my primary research interest. Yeah, so if you're talking about after entering undergraduate days, right? Like you've already chosen a department. Yeah. I would call, I am not very fond of sort of categorizing or putting things in boxes anymore, that this is metallurgy, this is aerospace, this is electrical. These boundaries have become very fuzzy now, and you can do anything from anything. So I would call, if you pursue engineering as something that is problem solving, then I would still think that you're in core. Okay, I wouldn't think that, maybe you go to consultancy or finance, then you're non-core. But just because you go from metallurgy to coding doesn't mean that you're not core, to me. So if I go by that definition, and if you come to this department, as an example, if I take, look at the variety of faculty that you have in this department and what all they do. I mean, we do things from computational, which involves hardcore coding, to use of softwares, to machine learning and AI, of course in the domain of materials. But this is a training, right? Like you gain experience in this, you can solve any problem which is in this related area. Right? Like the means or the path that you are taking towards solving that problem, that means is what you are learning. So finally, which problem you're going to solve later is something that, whatever destiny takes you to. So how does one know what they would enjoy the most without exploring, right? Don't make up your mind very quickly. Like don't make up your mind in your first year just by listening to peers that this is the thing that I should be doing all my life. Listen to yourself. because each of your journeys are different, right? Where you come from and what you want to do, that is an individual thing. That's so to find your individuality, even though you are in this group together, is something very important to find which direction you want to head to later. So I would welcome, especially when things are opening up, that students, especially in an institution like this, use the facilities that are available, use the labs, use the faculty. We are here for you. So walk into the labs, get to know what work goes on, and experience and immerse yourself in some of them at least. You need to explore, and once you find that you like something, work with it, like go with it. Again, don't shift just to fill your CV, like don't go from one to another, because it's not like you all have to have your unique CVs. All companies are not looking for machines like who are all the same, who have done 10 different things. If you show expertise and growth in something in depth, if you show depth in something, that is also very much appreciated. So if that is what you like, then you go to your choice of the core. Personally, I think I was, it goes a little up and down that way. In school, I was in a co-ed school, and it was almost a 50-50 ratio. So there we didn't feel that, we are different or we are a minority or anything of that sort. In college, yes, especially in undergrad, you felt it really, really badly. Because our college had, unlike in Bombay, we had restrictions of being confined to our hostels, and we had certain block timings which the boys didn't have, and we had to come back by like 7:38 to the hostels and then never get out of the compound walls. So that hurt really bad. Like I was very angry with that. But interactions as such with our own batchmates, that was never a hindrance. This was more of admin and getting angry at what these rules are. With our batchmates, it was never a problem that they looked at us or treated us differently. But there was this, of course, it's still teenage, and there are problems of seniors sort of troubling the sort of junior girls. I would say it was a lot of harassment of some sort. If I look back, I would call that as sexual harassment of some nature. So it was there, and we didn't have a mechanism to deal with that. We just dealt with it ourselves. So I used to hang out with one of the more popular girls, so to speak. Popular by which I mean like she was in all kinds of organizational activities. So she used to get like literally like people of, some of these, sort of jobless seniors would follow her and comment on everything. Like we had a basketball game and all the commentary would be on her. So I don't know how she endured it, but for me, it affected me just by looking at it. Like, I withdrew sort of. So in my college, it hurt in different ways. In IISc, it was even more funny, I would say. I didn't expect it, but you have again problems. IISc was that way a slightly more conservative place than undergrad in Suratkar. They probably don't have a single female faculty even now in materials engineering. In postdoc, it was very different. There was not even a skewed gender ratio, I would say. And Germany already had these sort of very empowering policies to, get more women students or postdoc scientists and so on. But during the student days, it was a bad experience, which I am now trying to, participate in activities where students get a little more aware and educated of how to treat any gender, like basically to not see gender as a barrier to anything, right? It need not be only women. There are so many, now we know that there are thousands of genders probably, but yeah, so that should not be a point of judgment or a point of harassment or the point of feeling left out for any reason. so we are sent to something called a staff hostel. So which like every delivery guy thinks it's a hostel. Like अंदर आ सकते हैं वो तो मतलब room में आ सकते हैं हम. Like ये घर है. But yeah, so I did spend a large part of my life in hostels, and I can only smile like from inside that it was such a joy ride. And if I think of takeaways, it helps you grow very quickly. There is no parental shelter, so you have to make your own decisions, and you have to be there for each other as friends. So I said, right, like I have had my closest group of friends are from my college life, my undergrad life. I don't think I have made such good friends anywhere else. Because in IISc, although we did live in hostels, we had our own rooms, individual rooms. And it was more lab friends rather than hostel friends. Because in IISc, we spent almost all our time, except we went to sleep in the hostel. But we were in the labs. So it's the undergrad hostel life that I have the most of the takeaway from. Because of also these block timings, we were the girls were confined to find their thing inside the hostel. And we had so many extracurricular activities which we participated in. But it's all about growing up. That time when you actually grow up, you kind of know everything about the other person. There's nothing really that you can hide. I don't see any negatives to it. I think one should experience hostel life at least once in their life. I've never felt homesick either. I in fact even enjoyed mess food, which is strange for most people. But my mother would not put much salt in her food. She was a very healthy eater. So I was like, oh, this is good. But yeah, jokes apart, growth is what I would call as the key word for me in a hostel setting. When we come to IIT Bombay also, we don't have housing here which is easily available. So we are sent to something called a staff hostel. So which like every delivery guy thinks it's a hostel. Like अंदर आ सकते हैं वो तो मतलब room में आ सकते हैं हम. Like ये घर है. But yeah, so I did spend a large part of my life in hostels, and I can only smile like from inside that it was such a joy ride. And if I think of takeaways, it helps you grow very quickly. There is no parental shelter, so you have to make your own decisions, and you have to be there for each other as friends. So I said, right, like I have had my closest group of friends are from my college life, my undergrad life. I don't think I have made such good friends anywhere else. Because in IISc, although we did live in hostels, we had our own rooms, individual rooms. And it was more lab friends rather than hostel friends. Because in IISc, we spent almost all our time, except we went to sleep in the hostel. But we were in the labs. So it's the undergrad hostel life that I have the most of the takeaway from. Because of also these block timings, we were the girls were confined to find their thing inside the hostel. And we had so many extracurricular activities which we participated in. But it's all about growing up. That time when you actually grow up, you kind of know everything about the other person. There's nothing really that you can hide. I don't see any negatives to it. I think one should experience hostel life at least once in their life. I've never felt homesick either. I in fact even enjoyed mess food, which is strange for most people. But my mother would not put much salt in her food. She was a very healthy eater. So I was like, oh, this is good. But yeah, jokes apart, growth is what I would call as the key word for me in a hostel setting. Yeah, I mean, this is something I think like everyone does. So I said, like, I came from a school which had lots of opportunities, and also I grew up in Mysore, which again is a strange place. Every other gully there is a music teacher or dance teacher, and to get rid of kids at home, parents send them to these classes. So we didn't have much of coaching and tuition, kuch nahi hota tha. So, but I ended up going to, learning classical music and dance and so on. And the most that I enjoyed in school was athletics. I was a very good athlete. I participated in, running and throw ball and basketball and so on. So sports, music, I think these two were sort of coming from school times. And in college, of course, there was a music club. There was sports of all kinds. We in fact even went to inter-NIT tournaments to play basketball. And from there, I went to another NIT to participate in their intercultural programs. So many of us came to IIT Bombay for more Indigo, in fact. So very lovely experiences. And that again shapes you. I think sports is something which again helps you learn lots of things of how to take both a win and a loss equally, and to take away the key points from there and change and learn. Yeah, so there was another, again, this was all like somebody, wanted a company. Okay, so I had a friend whose boyfriend would go to a Kung Fu class, and she was alone. She was the only girl who wanted to just he wanted to basically hang out with him. So she said, let's sign up for Kung Fu classes, you come along. So, okay, so we went, but we really enjoyed it so much that for 2 years, I think we were there. But somehow never give any exams, so I don't have belts to show for it. But it was so much work. Physically, it was draining, but a lot of fun. So, of course, the boys would feel very scared to fight with us. Finally you have to, right? You're only again two girls. I don't know why we end up as two girls in a big batch of boys.